Morning, morning. We are doing another Slater session. If you are watching this, welcome. Feel free to put any comments in the chat. And I am joined by the mighty duo that is Casey and Kayleigh. I needed to do the karate hands for that, just to show visually how mighty these two are. And these guys met at State of Flow event. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess almost a little over a year ago now, we both were at State of Flow in Florida.
A beautiful story. I saw that on your Twitter and I was like, let's start the live stream there. So you guys just locked eyes and then
pretty much.
We did. That was literally it. I think there was like a night hangout before State of Flow started, and Kayleigh was there, and I was like, "There's a woman who's about my age," and she was like, "Do you want to go get pizza?" And we got pizza, and I was like, "You and me, we're sticking together because
This is endgame.
not a lot of us around here."
nice. And then from there, you guys not only became friends, but you started doing some work together. Is that how it kind of unfolded?
Yeah. So after State of Flow, one kind of big thing that I took away from that was like, oh, it'd be really nice to talk with other people who do what I do on a regular basis. So Kayleigh and I ended up setting up just like a weekly call to talk, chat, set some goals for the week, see how we're doing. And through that, we ended up becoming really good friends. And over the kind of later half of this past year, we've done a couple of projects together, done some client work, and it's been super fun because we know each other's work really well. We collaborate together really well. So yeah, Kayleigh, I don't know how it's been for you.
No, it's been great. As part of my Mondays is my weekly chat with Casey. Try to keep each other on top of everything.
It's beautiful. That's really sweet. I'm so glad that you guys, because I think it is quite lonely being in the Webflow space as a freelancer, and you're like, I want the freedom and I want to choose which projects I have, and then you're like, fuck, I'm just on my own, like in my underpants in my bedroom, just like, what am I doing in my life? So yeah, it's really nice that you have that. I think everyone should have a kind of accountability partner as like in the Webflow space. Just kind of find someone that you can be like, I've had a terrible day. Can we chat this through or whatever? Yeah, or like I've got a problem with a Webflow project or whatever. So I think it's really important to find that person, and then for you guys to work together as well. That's so cool. It's awesome to like grow and learn together with someone who's at the similar kind of level and has similar goals and ambitions and stuff. It's a really important thing to do. So quick takeaway for anyone before we talk about Slater stuff. Speaking of Slater stuff though, so the reason why you guys are here today is because we had this competition. You guys smashed it, making a beautiful game, which I've put in the chat, Debug. And what I'd love to do is to start off by asking you guys how this idea came to be. Like, you saw the game challenge, you were like, let's get involved. How did this game ideate? What was the process?
Yeah, well, I kind of reached out to Kayleigh about it because I saw y'all post about it on LinkedIn or something. And Kayleigh and I kind of, besides meeting at that bar the night before State of Flow, we also were kind of like pushed into a Webflow challenge together at State of Flow where we had to like build something together very quickly. So we kind of like a little bit trauma bonded over that. Like, oh, I guess we have to do this in front of everybody. And I was like, wouldn't it be so fun if we did that again? What?
I said we won or something.
We did. We won. We did the best at State of Flow as far as like communication and building quickly. It was a weird time. But I was like, we should just do that again and it'll be fun. It's 2 weeks. I know you haven't used the tool. Kayleigh had never opened Slater before this. I had a little bit of experience. Like, whatever. Yeah, it'll be a great time.
What's the harm?
And was it as traumatic as the other challenge that you did, or was it better?
It was better because there were 2 weeks. I think there were ended up being 3 weeks for this challenge. And the other one had, I think, like 3 minutes. So this one was way better.
Time for
3
sure.
minutes, 3 minutes or 3 weeks. Yeah, big difference. Okay, but I mean, amazing that you won the State of Flow challenge. Let's first of all, if I had the sound effects on some kind of dashboard thing, which would be really fun if I did, but I don't. But I'll just go woo. So that's really impressive. And then you did obviously the Slater challenge and made it a crazy cool game. So what I'm going to do is quickly just share the screen for anyone that's watching and hasn't necessarily clicked the link that's in the chat and how to play themselves. Let's just quickly look at the game. So debug, don't hit the bugs, press the spacebar to jump. And I saw Mason did this when we were doing the actual, oh no. Is it
Takes a while to get the hang of it. I can't see it.
I was going to ask. I can't see it either. Okay.
Oh, that's me being an idiot. I haven't clicked add to stage. Okay, are you now looking at my screen?
Yep.
I'm looking at myself.
Okay.
I haven't played this game once, like since the challenge, if I'm being honest.
Okay, that's fine. I'm clicking start and I'm not sure if is it maybe I'm not doing something.
Let's see.
I don't think it's you at all for sure.
Let me see if it's me in the code. Kayleigh and I looked at it again yesterday.
Okay, I feel like sorry, I should have checked this before.
No,
let's okay. while you're checking. Let's put in the chat if maybe it's just me. If anyone's watching this live stream and is on the game, can you get past the start? See if you can.
It's working for me now.
It's working for you now. Why don't you share your screen and then I'll
share my screen.
Maybe it's because I'm doing I don't know, sharing it. Jeff says the game is to debug it. This is top quality coding banter. I appreciate the comment. Jeff, you're always providing the chat on the live streams. Great stuff. Okay, let me add your screen to the stage. Nice. Yeah. Okay, cool. Show us how it's done.
Here we go. I have a really big screen, so this is taking a while.
So big.
Oh, no!
I've noticed that the difficulty changes depending on like how big your screen is, which is definitely a fault with our code.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I've noticed sometimes if it's like a little smaller, it's a lot easier to do.
So maybe that's why because Mason did this while we were judging the games. He was playing with the games to judge them, and I think he probably has quite a big screen, and he like hit the bug every single time, and everyone was like, "Okay, this is kind of awkward because he's literally not getting past the first bug," but he did eventually, so maybe that explains it.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets faster and faster, or harder and harder. It doesn't actually get faster. It looks like it gets faster because there's more and more bugs. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or it does actually speed up, or they're just adding more.
It does speed up. Yeah, I did the kind of what happened as far as like delegating out between the two of us when Kayleigh and I were like, okay, how are we going to like build something together like collaboratively, was we kind of designated different pieces. So I kind of worked on just getting it across the screen and the increasing difficulty. Kayleigh did a lot of like the score work and just like button functionality, how it looks when it starts, the start screen, the play again. So that was a really good way to just be like, okay, who is working on what here? And then because we were both in the same Slater file and we were also using the AI piece, all that code was giving us just comments on how the different things worked. I can actually just share what it looks like here. So we spent a lot of time just like commenting, trying to divvy up the different pieces of it. And I don't know that we did the best way of like, okay, what is what here, and
Probably
clean
not.
code, because it was 2 weeks. But it was really good to work on it together, to have kind of different jobs also, so we weren't trying to argue over the same kind of pieces of code. We had kind of separate things to worry about there.
It's interesting that you guys were using the like comment feature in here, like as in you were just writing comments so that both of you knew what was what. One of the biggest questions that I get asked the whole time is, what is the difference between ChatGPT and Slater? Can you guys just answer that question for anyone that is like, I don't really like, it just seems like another AI tool. There's so many AI tools. Who cares? It's just ChatGPT, but an expensive version. What is your answer to that?
Yeah, I think the answer there is that it's all in one place. When I when I'm using ChatGPT, I'm usually going back between like my code file and then ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT might not know all of the updates I've made. With Slater, what I really like is that there's like a debug code function here, there's an explain code function here. It's really easy to move from here to the AI and back again, especially if I make changes that are not like GPT or AI recommended. Because that's one of the main hangups I get when I'm trying to like debug code or write code with ChatGPT is I might just make changes independently of whatever it recommended, and having to go back and re-explain. It's really nice to have it all in one place so that both I understand what's going on and I can also really easily bring that into the AI.
Nice. And Kayleigh, do you have anything to add or?
Well, my one preference for sure with Slater is that when I'm using the app, I don't have to bounce around. Basically the same thing, but it's so nice that I can literally copy the class name without having to, like, I can type on both of them at the same time, which is really great. I can copy the class name and paste it into the Slater thing without having to change anything. I don't have to change my tab. I don't have to go anywhere. So I really appreciate that.
Awesome. And I think another thing to say here is that obviously you've just got, you know, the single page that you're using for this code, but imagine having code across, you know, 20 different pages on a website. Like Slater is meant to be to manage the code as much as ideate, you know, write the code. Yes, there is an AI feature, which is a big part of this, but another huge part of it is that, you know, teams can use it across multiple different pages of a site. So it's like managing the code as much as, you know, ideating, creating the code. Because a lot of the time people are like, well, it's just an expensive AI tool. No, it's a tool that has AI baked in, which does make, you know, creating code and manipulating code easier, but it's also a management tool for custom code across a whole website, which I just think is a really important thing to clarify here. Beautiful. So you've written notes to each other throughout this code so that you both can, you know, work on this simultaneously, and you both know what's going on with each different part of the code. And then, so in terms of like, just before Slater, you ideated this stuff in Figma, and then we're like, okay, we're going to create like a girl running with a bug, and this is how it's going to look? Or was it like, okay, we know that there's a girl running and she has to jump over bugs. We want some kind of scoring. We're just going to like go for it. Or how did that kind of come about?
Casey definitely a solid Figma file. We had some inspiration going on. Casey did the whole like design of everything, the whole background and the girl and everything. So yeah, it did come from a Figma file. But I think we made some changes just as we were developing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I could pull it up here. That would be a fun thing to share. But yeah, so Kayleigh and I kind of had the idea just to do a really kind of retro game. Because basically our idea was, what is the easiest thing we can do? What is the simplest game we can make? So we were thinking a lot of like 8-bit style stuff. I was very like Stardew Valley graphics. And from that, we were like, okay, let's make the thing in Chrome where you just jump over stuff.
The dino guy.
The little dino thing when Chrome dies. That's so fun. I spend so much time doing that when Chrome dies. It's brilliant. So we decided to do our own little spin on that. And I plugged that into Midjourney, got this little lady, and then kind of ran with that. So there was
how you got such a perfect like
I know
what we needed.
It wasn't me for sure. You can kind of see here that I had to adjust it quite a bit. And there were some different iterations, but then we did just some adjusting it, bringing it into vector, moving stuff around, creating a little GIF. And then I had kind of wanted like more fun background stuff, but what it ended up being was just like simple as possible frames to create the game. But this is kind of what it ended up being in the end. But it was really just an idea of like, okay, what is the base number of elements we need to make a game? And how do we run from there? So we shared this Figma file to kind of figure that out.
Nice. And yeah, I agree with Jeff here. He's put, that's so cool. Love the style of the artwork. Agreed, Jeff. It's definitely got like quite an early video game feel. And I think that's like the sense of nostalgia that you have with that like style of game. I think just, you know, yes, it's very simple, but it's just really like aesthetically pleasing, I think. Just brings back like happy memories of like after school, before having a bit of dinner, you know, you're just having a little game. That's what I feel anyway, like me and my brothers playing like early Mario.
Oh, yes.
But that's awesome. And so it was intentionally simple to design, execute. And then if we go back to Slater, can we just have a little look at like what is doing what from the code to the project?
Yeah, sure. So all up here, we're just kind of grabbing most things from Webflow. So all the elements, the girl, the restart screen, all the game over elements, all the like score elements as well. And then in here, we're just setting some variables that are standard. So like the obstacle speed, the spawn rate, so how fast those obstacles are coming up. And in here is some of the game line speed too. So how fast the like ground is moving along with everything as well. And then whether or not the girl is jumping. So that's just based on like a true or false thing. And then the main functions we have are increasing difficulty. So that just increases the obstacle speed and the spawn rate, and incrementing the score. And then here is just jumping, which is just based on like, is the spacebar down? Is it jumping? If it is, it's moving, and also just creating a case in there that like you can't double jump. And I think this entire jump script was GPT, right, Kayleigh? Just AI.
Definitely did not write any of that by hand. So,
because I think what we had started with was like the jump, and check collision was another big one. And I think we left in the names here where we were like, it's still a dinosaur. So in our code, everything is like the dinosaur when really it's the girl, which was Kayleigh and I's understanding of how it would work too. So we were like, we don't want to go back and rename everything, so we'll just leave it as the dinosaur girl. So everything is kind of stemmed from that as far as the jump, the check collision, and then everything else is kind of just complementary to that. We have the save high score, we have reset, which just resets all of our initial variables, which is what happens at the end of the game when you click that play button. And part of that is the stop game and start game again. So the start game is what you're clicking when you first load the page and start everything up. I don't know how deep you want me to go into this, but it's not that much code.
No, I mean, it's good just to have a kind of initial overview, and then maybe we can look a bit closer. But I think something to highlight for anyone that's watching who might be looking at this code and like, this looks kind of intimidating, is essentially what you're saying is that you were doing piece by piece. So built everything in Webflow, and then you were like, okay, now I've got the class names. Now I know what I want Slater to actually act upon. That's when you then went into Slater and you were like, okay, hey, Slater, please can you make sure that you say please because the robot's taken over. And then you yeah, you got to be careful with these guys. I mean,
you never know.
Yeah, I need to become friends with Will Smith. I guess what I'm trying to say is like you were going piece by piece, you know, one at a time through the different actions that you want. So you were like, okay, we know what we want. When someone clicks start, we want the ground to start moving, the girl to start moving. We need them to hit spacebar and be able to jump. But essentially what I'm trying to say is you were going through every single little bit at a time and building this file by going through the actions. Is that, if I understood that correctly?
Yeah. When Kayleigh and I first started, we generated kind of the base code of just jumping over stuff. And that was a really good place to start because I think we had kind of separately like asked ChatGPT like, oh, how would we even make this? And it gave us kind of the base HTML elements. So that's kind of where we started in Webflow and where we started with the design is like, okay, what base elements do we need? We need the ground, we need a character, we need an obstacle, and we need the sky. So we built that in Webflow first, and then we connected that to the AI code that we had. And once we had that, we were like, okay, how could we keep building upon this? So this is like a lot of code, and it is also kind of like intimidating for me to look at because I don't write that much code. And I'm very impressed that Kayleigh and I were able to do this much with the game, even if it's like in like summary, not that much of a game. But it was really just, yeah, you're right. It's great.
Yeah, you're underselling this, Casey. It's sweet. You're not on a live stream because you didn't make something cool.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I'm not very good at hyping anything I do up, so I need to really work on that on myself. But it was really just like stacking things on top of each other. Because like once we had the obstacle thing, we were like, okay, how do we increase the speed? Added those elements in Webflow, connected it in Slater, and then, oh, how do we add score? And then go add that in Webflow, bring that in Slater. So it's really just once you have a good foundation, is adding in the pieces.
And I guess it was kind of like, I mean, as much as in hindsight, we're looking back and being like, okay, step one, Webflow, step two, you know, working out the code and stuff. Actually, it's a little bit of a messy process. You know, you're in Figma and you might design something beautiful, and then you get into actually developing and you're like, wait, that doesn't actually make sense. Like now I'm doing the development part. I need to go back and think about this. And then you might be like, build this whole thing out in Webflow and then be like, why isn't the code working when I try and interact with the classes or whatever? So I guess as much as I'm trying to like be like, okay, just to understand, step one, you did this, step two, maybe, it's worth saying that the kind of this whole thing of connecting up different parts from ideation to execution, testing, iterating, going back, like it is a little bit stop and start, I imagine.
Definitely. Yeah. And one thing Kayleigh and I, like when we started, like once we started adding on more and more, we realized more and more that like, oh, the base of this probably isn't enough to support extra things we want to do. Like we kind of wanted to add different obstacles in, but the base code we had for the girl, yeah, because yeah, like in Chrome, like there's like birds and stuff, and we're like, oh, we could do like flying bugs. But the base code, we were gonna have to like rewrite the whole thing, and we just decided not to do it because we didn't have the time.
That's me too.
Yeah,
and but it's cool that you guys didn't actually like you understand enough code to be able to manipulate it, but you didn't actually write this code yourself, which I think's like really awesome to hear, because I think when some people, like we had JP Dionisio on the stream, who is like wild. Like when he was doing this live stream with me, I was like, oh God, I'm so out of my depth right now. Is he was like, yeah, so obviously we just did, I just looked at this library and I just connected this via an API. And I was like,
for sure.
My God. Yeah, I was like, cool, JP, that's great. Well, we're going to wrap it up now. Any questions? But my point is that like there's people that are using Slater and obviously kind of supercharging their Webflow websites using custom code who are quite advanced, and maybe that's not as approachable for the average Webflower that wants to do some things that Webflow doesn't natively allow, or is harder to do in Webflow natively than maybe it would be if you did know some custom code, or know enough custom code to be able to manipulate custom code when using Slater after it's provided you what you need. So I just think that's really important to highlight, because you keep saying like, yeah, we didn't actually write this. We didn't. It doesn't matter. You made the end product is amazing. So I think it's really important to highlight that. So you wanted to add flying bugs throughout. Was there anything else that wasn't added because you were like, whoa, time doesn't allow? Or what was that, Kayleigh?
I think there were a couple of things that we wanted to add. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, a lot of it was just time constraint stuff. We definitely wanted to add the flying thing. There were some like if you play the game, it just speeds up, and that's how it gets harder. And there wasn't like a cap on that. And we were like, oh, we should increment it and add more. So like varying, like making it more variable how the obstacles come in. It was mostly just little things that would have made it better. But I think the main thing was like, oh, it'd be great if we could add a little flying thing in there. I was really proud of that we could just get it all to change once it was game over. That was very like exciting once we got that piece of it in.
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine. Sorry.
I don't know, Kayleigh, if you remember.
I think there were like a little like, I know we tried to add lines to the background, which made it look like it was moving even more. I think it works on some screen sizes, but not all. But yeah, I think if we were to change and add anything else to it, it would probably just be making it work a little bit better so that you don't like, the game doesn't break eventually. That would probably be priority number one if this was like something we were launching.
The game doesn't break. That's a good fix, I'd say.
No, for sure, right? And then just adding extra difficulties, extra obstacles, maybe a power up or something. It's hard to say.
Yeah. No, I feel like the base idea though is awesome. I feel like the kind of branding that you have for it is really strong. Like it's very obvious that it's like your game. When I went through all the different games and sent them to Mason, I was like, you got like a clear brand identity and stuff and a really clear concept. So it's really cool. If anyone has any questions, we've got a few people watching along. Feel free to ask anything you want, because I've got loads of questions, but we want this to be interactive. If anyone's watching along and has anything, feel free to type it in the chat. While people are thinking of questions, question for you guys then. So before we did this, before we started this stream, I was asking about, where you're using Slater more generally as well. Like after this whole game experience, I guess you've got more confidence using custom code and kind of being like, oh, I can actually take on things that I didn't even realize I could maybe take on. Considering how well you did in this game challenge. So just intrigued to know like how you're thinking about using custom code in projects now, and like what how you're approaching that using Slater.
Yeah, the reason I decided to do this challenge with Kayleigh is something we have been talking a lot about in our weekly meetings, is just like pushing Webflow more and like exactly how much we're able to accomplish with Webflow and custom code. So this was a fun way to be like, okay, what can we actually push with just the two of us? Independently, I've been doing a lot with like filtering code and like localization, which is something Kayleigh helped me a lot about with a certain project, is like grabbing a user's location and then applying that state filter to a project, which is something we used on a client project to like filter a database of providers and then kind of give people in that state to that person. So that was a really big project we took on. And so that was something we worked a lot with AI to develop. And this was kind of when Slater was new. And so it's something I personally have been kind of bringing into Slater to kind of debug and test, is figuring out that kind of localization piece, because it's not something that I have a ton of experience in, but it has been really useful to kind of nail down with an AI tool handy, because it's kind of a big undertaking to just do both of those things in tandem. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but basically the concept is you go to a page and whatever US state you're in, it'll show you a certain number of providers that practice in your state. And that's kind of the main project I've been working on with custom code and has really pushed me to do more. So that's one thing I've been using Slater for. On a smaller scale, it's just been helpful for like Webflow sliders, like being able to have a separate thing just for Splide code is the main thing I use. So just kind of creating a library of that is something I've been trying to do on my own. Is just like, okay, whenever I need a slider, I'm just gonna like pull it from this Slater library and use it there.
There's so many code snippets that I am always grabbing on, like every day I'm searching Timothy Ricks CMS slider on YouTube, and every day I'm copying the code. It's so awesome to just have it saved there that I don't have to go anywhere to grab it. It really makes a world of a difference, honestly.
That is awesome. There's plenty more to come from that perspective. There's a community library that we're about to launch, which will be launched along with new UI updates. So essentially what's happening right now, for anyone that's watching along, is like, what is Jack talking about? There is a personal library that you can save code snippets to within Slater. So say, you keep using code, obviously you can just save it to your personal library. But what we want to do is for there to be a code snippet library that's filterable depending on the outcome that you want to achieve. So you might be able to search like something quite obvious like slider, and fine, but also you'll be able to search through code that's been approved by other Webflowers who have used this code in their projects.
That's huge. That's so fun.
It's really exciting because we've had conversations with Corey Moyne because he's got this code snippet library on no-code supply code, and he's been awesome to give us feedback about how best to do it. We want there to be like Loom video embed, so if people explain the code, then they can also get involved in the Slater Advocates program. So to incentivize people to actually, help the community, there is a program going to be launched alongside that. Plenty of cool things to come, but it's great to hear that the personal library is so useful for you guys at this very nascent stage of Slater. You guys look confused, shocked. What's your thoughts?
I think that's going to be awesome, honestly, to have everything right there like that. I think that would speed everything up even more than it already does.
Awesome. Yeah. I hope so. There's plenty to come. It's actually quite overwhelming to talk about it because I'm like, there's so much that I need to create content around and stuff.
I know. But it's really exciting to kind of see it in this stage too, where things are like coming in quickly, and like it's a product that is very much evolving. I remember when Kayleigh and I started, we like found a lot of features that we were like, yes, this is exactly what we need.
Too.
Yeah, like the snapshots, like when I originally did this, we just like recopied the code into a different file, and I didn't realize you could just like save a previous version. I was like, oh, of course, that makes so much sense. And then like the code snippets, and yeah, there's a lot of really nice features in there that make a ton of sense for custom development.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of features that are in there, but there hasn't been enough effort put into creating like a smooth onboarding experience, and that's something that we're working on with the new UI updates as well. So there's a lot of change happening, but it's been an interesting process launching Slater, because obviously there's a lot of beta users that have kind of been giving a ton of feedback in Slack and Twitter and stuff, and it's very much building with the garage doors open. But that does come at a cost, where there's like features that are rolling out very fast, and there's not the documentation to kind of back it up, unless you are very actively using the product. Like if you use it 1 month and then come back 2 months later, you might be like, what are these buttons and stuff? So that's something that we are working on. But a very important point to bring up there, that there are a lot of features that need to be explained. It shouldn't be like, oh, I've just found a new feature within the dashboard. It's like, okay, that's a problem. Jeff says, is there a launch timeline? There is a launch timeline, but I don't know if you guys have seen these kind of small but mighty updates that Webflow is doing, where they won't actually tell you that a launch is going to happen until the launch happens. And I think part of that is because there's a ton of changes that are happening very fast, and maybe they can't like plan the marketing in advance as much as they would like. That's my interpretation of it, having worked in Slater and doing marketing for Slater. But I also think that, you might plan for a launch to happen, and then, there's like a launch build-up, and then the launch doesn't actually happen. So basically, though, Jeff, what I'm trying to say is that there is a rough timeline for V1 to be launched for paying users of Slater before Christmas. Slater Abacus program, similar scenario. But there's a lot of change that's going to be happening, and we want there to be kind of those paying users to be the first ones to use it, but also to test it, and then we can iterate before launching that more publicly. Hope that makes sense. If there's any other questions, feel free to ask them. Let's just ask you the most important question that I ask people on these Slater Spotlight sessions. If you were to change anything about Slater as people that use it, say I was to give you Mason's power to control this product, to control the product roadmap, and to determine the future of Slater, what would you change? Is there any features that you think should be there that aren't there, or any UI improvements? Anything that comes to mind?
The first thing that comes to my mind, which this is already 10 times better than ChatGPT because it has the code formatting and the colors and everything. Because I'm not like a JavaScript developer, I'm like an AI JavaScript developer. Sometimes I'll send it code and then I'll get a response back, and I don't know exactly what it changed. So like, I almost feel like if there could be a highlight feature or something where it's like sending the code back and then you can see like it's highlighted, like this is where it changed, and then I just copy that part or something like that. I know, like, I don't think ChatGPT does that either. I don't think anybody does that, but that would be nice, because then I could it would even make it easier than it already is, because I'd be like, okay, I just copied that part.
That's genius. That's so obvious, but actually so clever. Yeah, because you do get like spit back a ton of new code, and you're like going through it like, what's changed? I mean, my eyesight's not very good, so maybe that's why I'm squinting, but I'm like, what has actually changed? So yeah, that's a really clever idea. Okay, great feedback. I will talk to Jared after this call. Anything else that comes to mind? I've put you on the spot here, but just as people that have used the tool a bit, it's quite an interesting thing to ask.
Yeah. I think the thing I'm excited about that you've brought up is like a community library, which will, I think, be a huge plus to anybody who's starting to use the tool. The thing with Slater, because there isn't like a ton of documentation yet, is like I'm not quite sure how to use certain things. Like having different code on multiple pages is something I'm still figuring out. Like having code in the header isn't like totally there yet, because for Splide I need like code in the header and in the footer, I think. So I always have to add that back in. But I do like that you can add in libraries into Slater. So I think the biggest thing for me is like use cases of it being used like really well, and that always helps me figure out how I can use something more effectively.
Case studies. I am working on case studies. So basically right now, so I this isn't like official, but since you're asking about it, I'll tell you. So the marketing website, so we've got the product and the marketing website, right? And what we need to do is to link a lot closer the marketing website to the product stuff. So right now we've got articles in the marketing website, which are quite random, to be frank. There's YouTube, so there's spotlight sessions, which will write like a mini article. So there's video articles, and then there's topic articles, not nearly enough topic articles. And then there's case studies, which are severely lacking. So what I want to do is to essentially have 3 different types of resources: topic articles, video articles, case studies. And this is very much linked in with the community library because, for example, if you have a case study, like we might do a case study on debug. You know, what was the problem with trying to do this natively in Webflow? How did you overcome this using Slater? What code did you use? Copy, paste into Slater, or simply open that code from within the case study article, which will open in Slater so that you can actually use that and save that to your project. That is the plan, which I think is really exciting because if you're searching for something on Google, before Google changes from just being a search thing, but we'll put that to one side right now. Say you're searching for a problem, for example, like, I don't know, slider, Splide.js slider for Webflow, or something with code plus Webflow. We want to try and own that space. And with that, you can actually find an article or a case study or a video article, whichever has that organically found in search, can open that within Slater in the community library. So there'll be a lot more linking between the marketing site and Slater, if that makes sense.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love a case study.
I do too. I feel like we've got a lot of different case studies now with a lot of people that are not only using it for fun things like these game challenges that we started doing, which were more like visually appealing and obviously kind of showed, hey, you can do this in Webflow too, which was really important. But I think it actually alienated a lot of people who were like, well, why would I want to make a game in Webflow? Like, how does this help me with client work? And now there's a lot of people like Corey Moyne and Alan Tobin and people like that who are using this not just for ideating, getting custom code, but also hosting that custom code and then transferring the cost of that hosting to their clients, which is really exciting because now, it's more of a solid product, which means that there's a ton of content to make, not just from the Webflow user perspective, but also from the client perspective. Why are they paying for hosting there? Imagine, right? So there's like requests coming in. Yeah, so now there's a lot of content to make, a lot of different onboarding, a lot of different changes to be done. But it's exciting. It's definitely exciting. And I'm sure there'll be a ton of change, a ton more change to come in the coming months. Anyway, I'm not sure how much of that I meant to tell you on a live stream, but we've done it, so that's all good. Any other questions from audience about the game stuff? Any other questions that are maybe more broad about Slater generally? and also for you guys as well, if you want to ask me any questions, feel free. But this is your live stream, so I don't want to. Yeah, don't know.
For
Is
sure.
there anything else?
Yeah. I have
Yeah.
a question just about Slater and hosting. Because I
Mm.
know it was brought up, I think in a different live stream about like hosting code with Slater. Like how is that? Like how does that work? Do like what is it hosted through, or is there like improvements being made there? And is that like a big feature that's trying to be pushed? I'm just like curious about it because I haven't done it yet, like hosted it on a live site with Slater, just because I'm afraid. But I was just curious about what it's like hosting code with Slater on like a live production site.
Yeah, so this is an important topic that people have talked about because one thing is that the code is going to be within a team project if you have a team. So obviously those team members will need to be invited for that to be seen. So it's a little bit like once you transfer the code to your client, so similar to Webflow, you can then be invited by your client to actually edit that code, but it's being the cost of the hosting is being paid for by the client. So similar to the Webflow model. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Cool. So that's how that part works. And right now there's so there's people that are paying to use Slater. So we've got 50 paying users now, and obviously the paying users can transfer their projects across to clients. So a user like me or you would be paying $10 a month to use Slater, to have unlimited projects, unlimited AI requests, but then they can transfer the cost of hosting to their client. So that's how that part works. Once the project's in the client's account, that you can be invited to continue to edit the code or create new pages or whatever, just like you would with Webflow. And then in terms of like how safe that code is, I mean, that code is within, as long as you haven't made that file public, like that's between you and your client. Like no one else can do that unless they're invited to the project from the client side. So that's how that bit works. And then in terms of security, I mean, it's all through Amazon web servers. So it's the S3 bucket. It's like the most, I mean, it's what tons and tons of, websites use. It's the most secure that you can get. So in terms of, it's like if the internet goes down, then Slater's going down. But in terms of hosting, it's pretty secure. And we're still trying to work out this whole cost of, like, the pricing of Slater is still quite an interesting discussion where we're trying to work out, if because for the average freelancer, they might not have a client that wants to pay for hosting when the code can be hosted potentially in Webflow if it's under 10,000 characters. But then it's a bit of a nightmare because you've got to do everything in Slater and then copy and paste all that code across. And so it has been brought up by Matt Evans, this whole idea about like, is it like with clients that are quite pushy, do they want to pay for hosting with Slater? And as a result, does the business model work? For most clients, the cost of hosting code is negligible for like larger clients, but I think it can become an issue as a Webflower when you're like, oh, I'm using this tool and I'm using this tool and I'm using this tool, and the cost of the build increases as you do the build, and your client is like, whoa, you said the price was this, and now it's like, oh, I'm paying for this tool, I'm paying for this tool. So that is something that we're thinking about. I think I covered way more than you asked for there. Is that annoying? Did that help?
No, that was really helpful because like I haven't really heard or like understood very much about like, oh, you build the project and then it is transferred, and that like cost is transferred too. So that's really good to like understand, especially moving forward with Slater.
Yeah, I mean, again, coming back to the onboarding experience, coming back to UI changes, like there's so much that needs to be done. I mean, we've Kabaza from, well, he used to do Flux stuff, but now he's doing his own agency. I was going to say Kabaza from Flux Academy, but he's going to be making a course about like for Slater to basically be like, how do you
Whoa,
set up a project? How do you do this? How do you do that?
nice.
So that's exciting, and that's going to be like quite a fundamental education piece that I think we're severely lacking right now. When UI changes happen, obviously there's onboarding changes, onboarding experience that will need to, happen as well. So there's kind of what features are where, like as you enter the panel, like what is happening, and then obviously from that there's also the client explanation piece, like how do you sell Slater to your client? How do you make them understand what Slater even is and what the value is? And off the back of that, do you understand it well enough to even sell it to your client? Well, that's an education piece that needs to happen between Slater and the workflow community. So these are all things that are very valid. And you're not the first person, Casey, who said, I don't really understand this whole client transfer thing. Can you explain it to us? It's a really, really important piece that is inbound. Hope that makes sense.
It is.
There's tons of stuff that I want to tell you and explore with you guys, but I'm not too sure I'm really meant to. So what I might do is just hold that thought, and off, maybe on Twitter or whatever, we can, if there's any other questions that you guys have, I'm more than happy to talk about it. It's just, I'm not really too sure I'm meant to explain too much future stuff on this live stream, although I kind of have already, but that's fine. Should we wrap this? The questions from Jeff. Jeff was the only one asking questions. Jeff, if you're still here, shout out to
Jeff,
you. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Jeff.
I really do. I really appreciate you being as supportive as you are. Mason talks about you constantly. And Thomas in the chat. We had, I'm going to say Thomas because I feel like an idiot trying to do the French. But anyway, had a great live stream with you. Appreciate you as well. Thanks so much for everyone who's watching. Thank you to Kayleigh and Casey for coming on and sharing all this Slater goodness with us. JP's here. JP, we were just talking about you. Hey, man.
Guys.
Oh, my God.
Legend.
Oh, legends in the space all watching your live stream, guys. That's because you're here. They come for you. Isn't that beautiful? Do you guys have any last words to say to anyone that's watching about any of this Slaterness or anything you want to say?
I don't know. Yeah, we love Slater. We, as like the only people who worked on it together, we would definitely recommend like doing projects with other developers together. It's like a great way to like learn from each other, learn more, and also learn a tool together, which was really fun to do.
I completely agree. Also, don't feel intimidated by code. If we can do it, you guys can do it for sure.
Beautiful. I mean, you're really underselling yourselves, guys. You really need to big yourselves up more than you do. I'll be your hype man whenever you come in with like a little bit of a undersell. I'm gonna be like, oh, these guys are great. I don't know why I need to do that shoulder movement as well, but just be like over your shoulder, like, they're underselling themselves. Okay, we're gonna wrap it. Thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time, guys. Thanks so much for everyone watching. Appreciate everyone being patient with Slater as we go through this whole ideation to execution to explaining stage as well, because I know that there's a lot of people with a lot of questions. These questions will be answered as we move forward together. But appreciate all the commentary and feedback on Twitter and Slack. If you're not in the Slack, send me a message on Twitter @Slater_. jack_app or at jackredley1, and we'll get that set up as well, because that's where a lot of people are giving feedback. A lot of discussions are happening about pricing, product roadmap, and more. All right, that's a wrap. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate you. Have an amazing rest of your day.
Thanks, Jack.
Bye.
Bye.
That's the end of the stream.